So good morning, everyone. I'm Officer Kenneth Forrest, a spokesperson for the Aurora Police Department. We are holding today's press conference to provide updated information about the 1984 cold case murders of the Bennet family and Patricia Smith. We have several speakers, starting with Chief Nick Metz of the Aurora Police Department, Chief Dan McCaskey with the Lakewood Police Department, Director John Camper with the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, District Attorney George Brockler of the 18th Judicial District, and District Attorney Pete Weir of the 1st Judicial District. There's going to be some information provided about this incident or these incidents, and we're asking anyone who has any information to contact. We have 2 tip lines. So our first tip line will be for the Aurora Police Department, and that number will be 303-739-6400. And the second number will be for the Lakewood Police Department tip line, and that number will be 303-763-6800. These are 24-hour tip lines. We are asking everyone to hold their questions until the end. Chief Metz.
Good morning. Just shy of 4 years ago, I arrived to Aurora from Seattle, and one of my first orders of business was to ask our major crimes unit to give me a rundown of any cold cases that we had in process. And this was one of the cases that they provided information for to me. And I remember this case very specifically at the time because it was really reminiscent of a case that I responded to as a young officer in the 80s in Seattle. It's an unrelated case, but nonetheless a case that obviously stuck with me. And so hearing this particular incident, it was one that I knew obviously was important that we continue to push forward on. It was obvious that our detectives, those who were on the case still and those who had retired, it was a case that they were not giving up on and were continuing to move forward on. It was obvious that this case haunted our detectives and officers who responded that night and who continued to work forward on processing and investigating. It was a case that haunted the families and the victims to the core. This is why, as we are preparing this press conference today, that we have asked not only the detectives who have continued to work this investigation on a regular basis to be here with us today, but we've also asked our retired detectives to be here, because this is a case, as I've said before, was something that shocked the conscience of our community and something that our detectives, retired and current, were not willing to give up on. Detective Steve Connor from our Major Crimes Unit, who investigates many of our cold case investigations, has stuck with this for quite some time. And even in conversations I had had with him prior to this, he would always say this was not a case that he was going to give up on before retiring. To the point where he actually even helped create an investigatory TV show with Paul Azan called On the Case, not that long ago. The case to show that, number one, we still took this case incredibly serious and that we were going to continue to move forward in every way we could. When I received the call from Director John Camper from the Colorado Bureau of Investigation just a few short weeks ago and was told the results of the DNA results, it sent a chill through my spine. And as I told folks in our office about the information we had received, there was a great deal of elation in knowing that we possibly had that suspect identity known and hopefully in custody. And it was really clear that even for officers who had come on well after the murder of the Bennet family, it was something that they too felt was a great news to get at that time. It was also obvious that our Aurora community remembers. I've received a number of calls from people in the community who lived here and remember this case clearly. Since that day, the cooperation between the Aurora Police Department, the Lakewood Police Department, the Jeffco District Attorney's Office, and the 18th Judicial District, as well as the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, has been amazing, and that cooperation will continue as this case moves forward. And you will hear the cooperation that we've received from Nevada law enforcement, and it continues to absolutely be amazing. We are thankful for the advancement in science and what that science has done in contributing to this, in solving this case. Just a day or two after receiving word of the DNA results, we met with the family members and victims and family members of this suspect. And it was obvious in talking with them that there was no closure. There's been no closure. And these murders have not only destroyed the lives of those who were killed, but it's destroyed the lives of those who are still with us today. Our hope is that even though we will never really be able to bring closure to these families, we hope that they will feel a sense of justice and be able to heal just a little bit more. And we, as the Aurora Police Department, and I know as the Lakewood Police Department, as Chief McCaskey I'm sure will say, is that we will continue to support our victims through our victim services in whatever capacity they need. I would like to now ask Chief Dan McCaskey of the Lakewood Police Department to please come up and say a few things.
Thanks, Chief Metz. Good morning, everybody. I'd like to begin by thanking the members of the Lakewood Police Department, the Aurora Police Department, the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, the 18th Judicial District, and the 1st Judicial District for their efforts to pursue justice for these vicious homicides. Every law enforcement country in this country has cases such as this that really haunt them, these cold cases. And this was one of those cases that haunted the Lakewood Police Department, and I know, as Chief Metz said, the Aurora Police Department as well. Even though many of our detectives that are no longer here at the department have retired or since passed away, we have never forgotten this case. We've never forgotten these families. And this arrest will really, it won't bring back any of our victims. It won't change this tragedy, but it means a lot to these families and our organizations. Hopefully today starts another chapter in the lives of the Bennet family and the Smith family. As I said, it won't bring back the family members. Nothing can ever undo this terrible tragedy, but hopefully we begin a sense of healing, a sense of peace, and maybe a sense of justice. Throughout this difficult journey that we have ahead of us, we will be with these families every step of the way. That's our commitment to these families, and see that this case is finally finalized and that there is some justice. The Smith family will also release a statement later today regarding this case. And I'd just like to conclude by telling our communities, the communities of Aurora and Lakewood, that your police officers, your public servants are dedicated to solving all of the cases that come our way. We never forgot this case even 34 years later, and I think that's a testament to the professionalism of both the Lakewood and the Aurora Police Departments. It's challenging, it's difficult, but we don't forget these cases. They have a place in our heart, and hopefully we will bring justice for these families. I'd like to introduce John Camper, the Executive Director of the Colorado Bureau of Investigation.
Thank you, Chief. Good morning. I'm John Camper, Director of the Colorado Bureau of Investigation. I want to provide you with a brief timeline of the steps taken by the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, which ultimately led to a positive DNA match in these cases. Keep in mind, please, also that this information also appears in the affidavits that have been shared with you as well. Evidence from both the Smith homicide and the Bennet homicide was initially submitted to the CBI on January 17th, 1984. As you likely know, that was before DNA began to be widely used in criminal investigations. In 2001, a DNA profile was first obtained from evidence in the Bennet case. That profile was uploaded into CODIS, which is the Combined DNA Index System, which is an FBI database of DNA profiles from throughout the nation. Work continued for many years, and in 2010, based on multiple items of evidence that were submitted for further DNA testing, the CBI was able to develop a DNA profile of the suspect in the Smith homicide. Equally important, scientists were able to establish that that profile in the Smith homicide matched the DNA profile that had been obtained 9 years earlier in the Bennet homicide, confirming a link that investigators had long suspected in those cases. Fast forward, if you will, to 2018. In early July, the Nevada State Database forensic staff entered buccal swab results from Mr. Ewing into the National CODIS database. The CBI does a nightly search of that database to all of our cases, and on the following day, we recognized that a CODIS match was made between the buccal swab of convicted offender Mr. Ewing to the forensic samples from the Bennet case. And of course, as I mentioned a moment ago, the CBI had already established that that profile from the Bennet case matched that of the Smith case as well. Within about a week, after additional verification work by CBI scientists, a confirmation of both matches was made with the name provided by the Nevada State Database. We arranged for a conference call, as mentioned by Chief Metz, with the law enforcement partners that are represented here today, and subsequent follow-up has led our partners to the events of today. Before I close, I too want to take a moment to first say how proud I am of the CBI scientists, both past and present, who have put so much work into this case over the last 34 years. More important, let me say also how proud CBI is to be part of the outstanding team represented here today of dedicated investigators and law enforcement partners who never for a moment backed away from their effort to seek justice in these cases. So let me next introduce District Attorney George Brockler of the 18th Judicial District.
My name's George Brockler. I am the District Attorney for the 18th Judicial District. That includes Arapahoe County, where you are right now, where this crime was committed, and Douglas, Elbert, and Lincoln counties. 12,626 evenings ago, the Bennet family of four, 27-year-old Bruce, 26-year-old Debra, and their two daughters, celebrated the 7th birthday of one of those girls. At that birthday celebration was Bruce's mother, Connie. Next day, Connie came over to the house to discover that the family had been reduced to one, the 3-year-old, who was still alive but suffering serious injuries. Today represents the first public and formal step on what will prove to be a long journey towards justice in this case. Now, if we're going to achieve justice in this case, as with all cases in our system, it is important that I tell you, and I tell you it is important that you report to the public, that no matter what you hear here today, no matter what you discover on your own, no matter what you read in this affidavit, that this individual is presumed innocent and must be presumed innocent until such time as he may be convicted beyond a reasonable doubt. This is one of 200 unsolved murders that I inherited when I became the district attorney here. A matter of significance to me was in trying to bring to justice those people who have committed the most heinous acts against violations of our law, murder, and see that they didn't escape culpability and responsibility. So we created a cold case unit. The cold case unit has been involved in this case even before the break in the DNA evidence that Mr. Camper described to you. It is important that you know that we take these cases as seriously as any that will come across our radar. And I have some of the best prosecutors in the state of Colorado assigned to handle this case. I myself will handle this case with them. Now, there's some things I want to tell you, and there's going to be an opportunity for questions. But back in 2002, based on the ever-changing DNA technology, and make no mistake, DNA is what brings us into this room today, there was a series of charges that were filed by my predecessor's predecessor in the DA's office, 18 separate counts. Those counts were attributed to a John Doe profile that has since been changed to reflect the individual that now stands accused of these particular charges. Now, those 18 charges include 6 counts of first-degree murder, 7 other substantive counts, and 5 what we'll call sentence enhancer counts of crimes of violence. Some may ask, how is it that you have 6 counts of first-degree murder and only 3 victims? That is because there are 2 different theories of culpability on murder. One is after deliberation with intent. The other is based on a felony murder theory. That should explain some of that. I think other questions that may arise involve, well, look, the law was different back in 1984. That is true. And I want to tell you what else makes this a bit of a hurdle, at least at the front end, is back in 1984, Al Gore had not yet invented the internet, and everything was written in something called books. So we are tearing through as much paper as we can to make sure that we know how the statute of limitations applies, how the different aggravating factors may apply to these charges, the different sentencing parameters. Right now, I tell you that murder back in 1984, even under both of these theories, was punishable by life in prison with the potential for parole after 20 years. That is not the case today. Today, if you're convicted of first-degree murder, you will go to prison without the possibility of parole. These are all things we continue to explore and research as we move forward with this case. I think one of the other things to ask is procedurally what happens next. Today, we will work alongside the 1st Judicial District DA's office, and District Attorney Pete Weir will talk about that, to perfect the extradition paperwork that we will send to the governor's office. I have every confidence that the governor will very quickly seek to extradite this individual from Nevada, where he is currently incarcerated, and we will bring him into our court process for the purposes of having him answer for these charges. I want to thank a whole bunch of people here. Arapahoe County Sheriff's Office has been great. All these partners, Aurora, Lakewood, 1st Judicial District DA's office. But I also have to tell you that something significant that took place because of the Nevada Attorney General, a guy named Adam Laxalt. Back in 2013, Nevada decided to join almost every other state in the country, and by the way, there's still a handful that don't do this, and say, we are going to authorize the DNA testing of those people who have been incarcerated or are going to be incarcerated into prison. But despite the fact that that law was passed in 2013, the Nevada Department of Corrections resisted testing their population of inmates until they received an order, an opinion from the Nevada Attorney General. And that opinion made it clear that they should go back and test retroactively all the other current inmates. And that is how we discovered this individual right here. That is why we are here today on these particular charges. So I thank the Nevada Department of Corrections. They've been tremendous partners with us. The Attorney General for the state of Nevada, Adam Laxalt. The Clark County, Nevada District Attorney's Office has worked extremely well with us, as has the Mojave County, Arizona County Attorney in this particular case. As you can imagine, this is not a case where one person or one organization can see it through. It's going to be a team effort, and it has been so far, and I appreciate that. You are going to see, when you review the affidavit, the graphic nature of the injuries as described, I think, beginning on page 4. There will be other questions about when will this case reach resolution. I can't tell you that. I've handled some significant cases in my day, and I have never once predicted how long it would take to get to the end of the justice-seeking process, and that holds true for a case even like this one that's 34 years old. but I promise you, we will do everything we can to uphold all the rights of the accused in this case, but also vigorously pursue justice on our end. Now, there's going to be an opportunity for questions, and I'll hang around for that, but it is my pleasure, honor, to introduce to you my former boss and also the district attorney for the 1st Judicial District, Jefferson and Gilpin Counties, Peter Weir.
Thank you, George. Good morning. I am Pete Weir. I'm the District Attorney for Jefferson and Gilpin Counties. I want to start by reiterating what George just said with respect to where we are in the process, but also what the law provides. At this point, the bringing of charges against any individuals, including Mr. Ewing, affords that individual the presumption of innocence. And the bringing of charges are mere allegations, and that presumption of innocence remains with any defendant unless and until all charges or any charges are proven beyond a reasonable doubt. January 10th, 1984, Patricia Smith was at her home in Lakewood. Here she was having lunch, and that lunch was interrupted. She obviously met with an individual that then proceeded to beat her to death and to assault her. It's been over 34 years, but the search for the killer, Patricia Smith, never ended. Yesterday, we presented an affidavit that detailed recitation of facts that we believe supported probable cause to ask for a warrant for the arrest of Alexander Christopher Ewing, currently in custody in Nevada. Our request for a warrant detailed that we believe Mr. Ewing is responsible for the murder and assault on Patricia Smith. We will be filing charges early next week. Yesterday, Jefferson County District Court judge issued a warrant for the arrest of Mr. Ewing, alleging that he has committed the murder of Patricia Smith after deliberation with intent, and also under 3 different theories, felony murder. There are also violent crime counts attached to that affidavit and to the charges we anticipate next week. This is a time not only to pursue justice, to step back and once again remember Patricia Smith and her family. Justice in this case has been delayed, but I'm confident that justice is not going to be denied. It's also a message, I think, to all family members and loved ones of victims who've gone through the tragedy of experiencing a murder that we say has turned cold. The work of the men and women and the organizations that are represented by the men and women standing behind me indicates, exemplifies, and proves that these individuals are not forgotten. The cold case victims and their families are not forgotten. Law enforcement, our forensic scientists are unrelenting in their pursuit of the truth and in their pursuit of justice. And they do not rest until we exhaust every possible means bringing those responsible to justice. And it should serve as a warning to those who may have committed these crimes that we are still out here. We are still looking. We are still working. And if you are responsible, ultimately, we'll find you. I also want to thank the great work of CBI, the Aurora Police Department, the Lakewood Police Department, George's office, and the men and women in my office. This truly is a coordinated, combined effort. Sometime today, we anticipate that we will be going to the governor's office and requesting that Mr. Ewing be extradited from the state of Nevada. Depending upon how that is handled, both by the governor's office and the governor's office in Nevada, Mr. Ewing himself, this matter could take anywhere from a couple of weeks to perhaps a month or two. We just don't know. But we're going to move with all appropriate speed to have Mr. Ewing return to the state of Colorado to exercise all of his rights and to be able to bring these matters to an appropriate resolution. Thank you all for being here today. That concludes my comments. I'm sure you're going to have comments or questions for members of the panel.
The hotlines that you mentioned, the purpose for that now is that now that you know who the suspect is, that you're hoping that additional information will come forward about him and to help bolster a case? I think just like with any kind of crime that we investigate, we always anticipate that somebody knows something. It could be just a small sighting that someone had of Mr. Ewing or who they suspect was Mr. Ewing. Any information, no matter how small or insignificant somebody may think it is, could be that one piece that could really help us in prosecuting this case. So we really are encouraging folks to call us, let us decide whether or not the information they have is usable or not.
If I remember correctly, there were other hammer attacks at the time. Is it believed that Mr. Ewing is responsible and will he be charged for those as well?
We have accused Mr. Ewing of the things that we believe we can ethically proceed on. I can't tell you that we have enough evidence to proceed on those other cases, but frankly, that hotline, to the extent that we get other additional information, we will judiciously and ethically pursue that. But for right now, he stands accused of the crimes we think we can ethically prove.
Can I ask that question a different way? Do you think those two earlier attacks in Lakewood and the sexual assault of the flight attendant, which occurred in that same
I appreciate the question. I get why you're asking it. It would be reckless for someone in my position to speculate about that. We'll continue to investigate those crimes just like these, and when evidence presents itself, we'll take the appropriate steps.
Well, you up there,
Yep.
and Mr. Weir as well, could these be a death penalty case?
I'm speaking only for the case that we have. The law that applied back in 1984 did provide for capital punishment under certain circumstances. Now, I have made no decision about this, and I'm not going to rush into a decision about it, but you should know that our preliminary review of this suggests that there are 3 potential aggravators that existed back in 1984 that may apply to this specific case. That is a long lawyerly answer to, yes, I think this is potentially a capital punishment case. The affidavit that will be provided to you includes, I think, a description of some of the other pieces that led to this discovery. It will include information like that on there. I don't have a detailed recollection of every single thing that landed him in a 70-year prison sentence in Nevada, but it's in that affidavit for sure.
With respect to the homicide related to Patricia Smith, there are statutory factors that could qualify this case as a death case. But whether or not to seek death in a case is the most significant decision that any prosecutor makes. And it's only done after an extensive evaluation of the facts, the law, in consultation with victims' family members. That's the process we will engage in with respect to the Lakewood case.
Maybe the CPI comment a little bit more on the DNA evidence and how it's changed over the course of this case, what you had beginning and now.
Sure. Well, you're absolutely right. DNA has gone through some major technological upgrades since the 1990s. And so throughout that time period, evidence that had either already been submitted or was subsequently submitted for DNA analysis was in many cases reanalyzed as the technology improved. So, as you heard, that in this case, it's some of that reanalysis that finally allowed for a profile that could be placed into CODIS.
How do you establish a profile? Can you talk about what that means?
You know, I can't really get into the technical aspects of it, but we've got folks that could do a lot better job of that than I could, that we'd be happy to get you in touch with, that can kind of walk you through some of the science of that. I would only embarrass myself.
Fair enough.
And the hit that you just had recently, that was just a routine test of
So,
everybody?
as I understand it, every night we run our cases through the CODIS database as a routine. Those are run. And so, yes, on a date in early July, we did learn that there was a positive match to the individual in Nevada on a profile that had recently been entered by their agencies.
That positive match, y'all rerun it, double check what you just got, and make sure it's not a fluke, like before you start calling everybody and going, guess what?
Yeah, most definitely. And one of the reasons that you know, we started learning about this in early July, and now we're into August, is so that much of that verification work can take place. There's a lot of scientific verification work and checking and rechecking that needs to be done, and that takes some time and takes some assistance and cooperation from agencies in Nevada as well.
Run that every night, how often do you get a hit if something matches?
We frequently get hits on, you know, certainly not often on cases as monumental as these perhaps, but we get frequent hits on cases that might be property crimes, it might be other persons' crimes, and then that information is immediately forwarded, as we did in this case, to the investigating agencies. They get that information and follow up on it from there. I can't say. I can only speak to the CBI portion of this.
I think for the integrity of the investigation at this point, we're not going to be able to comment on that question. Thank you for it.
Had Director Camper talk about this. Look, to the extent that what you're recording here is going to go outside the state of Colorado, look, every state in this country has unsolved cases. Some less serious, some as serious, some more serious. If you are one of those handful of states, Montana, that doesn't have the DNA law that we have, that Nevada now has, pass this, do this for the victims of those cases that are still hanging out there wondering if they'll ever get justice on their cases. I promise you, if you do this, you have the opportunity to help bring some closure to people who have these gaping holes in their lives from crimes that have not yet been solved. Do that.
Well, there was a technological term, you said buccal swab, what does that mean?
So again, I've got some scientists that can walk you through some of the specifics, but essentially that's a swab of the inside of the cheek. And based on that, you can analyze that to try to obtain a DNA profile.
Two more questions.
Is it possible that Detective Connor or any of the other detectives that have worked on this for a long time could talk about how they're feeling today?
Guessing they're going to decline on that right now. And I think a lot of the reason why they are declining on it is not because they don't want to comment, but again, because this case is so important and there's a lot more factors that need to go move forward on this in the processes, that we want to make sure we're doing everything possible to protect the integrity of the investigation.
How was the family notified? What was their reaction?
So we contacted the family that was involved in the Aurora case. We hosted a meeting with them in our office. I can tell you it was, without going into detail, it was a very emotional meeting. It opened up old wounds. It brought back a lot of very horrific memories for them. But at the same time, I can safely say that they were incredibly appreciative of us reaching out to them. And again, as I said earlier, we assured them that through this process, we're going to be there for them and provide them whatever resources to move forward.
So I just want to thank everybody for coming today. If there's any further questions, you could call our respective PIOs from CBI, 1st Judicial District, the 18th Judicial District, Lakewood Police Department, or Aurora Police Department. This is the first stage, as they talked about, for justice for the victims. Thank you, everybody.